He only tried to help. Now the human soldier is married to the alien princess. Beginning, the war between humanity and the Veari Empire had been brutal, stretching across 6 star systems and leaving billions displaced. The Veari were a proud reptilian species with scales that shimmered like gemstones under starlight, towering bodies built for both combat and elegance. They were feared across the galaxy, but also admired for their fierce honor code. For Corporal Daniel Mercer, war had stripped away any illusions of glory. He had signed up at 19, believing in medals and heroics, only to find himself knee-deep in mud and blood on alien worlds. Now at 26, he was tired. Tired of orders, tired of fighting, and tired of seeing comrades fall. On the scorched moon of Veara Prime's 3rd satellite, fate twisted his life in a way no military briefing could have prepared him for. His unit had been ambushed while scouting the crumbling ruins of an old Veari temple complex. Plasma fire cracked through the thin atmosphere, and screams echoed in Daniel's ears as half his squad went down. Pinned against a broken wall, Daniel saw something strange through the dust and fire, a cloaked figure stumbling, pursued by 2 heavily armed Veari soldiers. At first, he thought it was an enemy combatant, but when the figure collapsed, the hood falling back, he froze. It was a young Veari woman, not a soldier. Her scales were fine and patterned like delicate crystal glass, her face younger than any he'd seen among the warriors. Her hands were bound, her breathing ragged, and her golden eyes darted toward him with something that looked more like terror than aggression. Daniel didn't think. He only acted, rising from cover. He fired his pulse rifle, dropping one of the pursuers before the other had time to react. Rolling into position, he shot the second in the leg and knocked him unconscious with the butt of his rifle. The girl tried to crawl away, clearly expecting him to kill her. Instead, Daniel knelt, cutting the bindings around her wrists. "You're safe," he said, even though his words meant nothing in her language. His translator chip struggled, spitting out broken phrases. "Still," she hesitated, then looked up at him with an expression that would change his life forever. Unknowingly, Daniel Mercer had just saved the heir to the Veari throne. Princess Silari Veer. Middle. The revelation came later. When Daniel's battered unit retreated to an abandoned bunker for regrouping, the girl followed. At first, his comrades wanted to leave her behind or treat her as a prisoner of war, but she clung to Daniel, refusing to be separated. Slowly, through the glitchy translator, her identity unraveled. She was the daughter of Emperor Veer himself, captured by traitorous factions within her own people and left to die in the crossfire. The squad's comms officer panicked. "If she's telling the truth, we can't keep her. She's leveraged, Dan. Political dynamite." But Daniel couldn't shake the memory of her eyes, full of both fear and strange gratitude. He knew the brass would use her, maybe even torture her. That wasn't why he'd saved her. He had acted on instinct, and his instincts told him to protect her. So he became her shadow. He found her food, shared his water, taught her simple English words while she taught him fragments of her own tongue. The others mocked him, calling him the lizard's pet, but he didn't care. It wasn't long before orders came down from command. Deliver the Veari princess to Central Command immediately. But things didn't go as planned. En route, their convoy was ambushed again, not by human enemies, but by Veari loyalists who had tracked Silari. Amid the chaos, Daniel's vehicle was hit, sending it tumbling down a ravine. When he came to, bruised and bleeding, he found himself alone with the princess, the rest of his squad scattered or dead. For days, they wandered together across hostile terrain. Silari proved far from helpless. She knew survival tricks, how to sense approaching storms, which plants were safe to eat. Daniel, in turn, defended her from scavenger drones and bandits. They learned to trust one another, and, stranger still, they laughed together. She teased him for his clumsy attempts at her language, while he marveled at her stubborn refusal to show weakness despite her royal upbringing. One night, huddled near a dying fire, she whispered something the translator failed to catch. When Daniel asked her to repeat it, she only touched his hand lightly, as if testing his reaction. He didn't pull away. By the time they reached the human outpost, the bond between them was undeniable. But what awaited them was worse than the battlefield. The human general saw Silari as nothing more than a bargaining chip. Plans were already underway to parade her as a hostage, forcing the Veari Empire into concessions. Daniel objected, furious, but his protests were ignored. He was ordered to step aside. That night, Silari made a choice of her own. Before the High Council of Human Commanders, She declared, through the translator, that Daniel Mercer was her chosen one. In Veari culture, this was no casual phrase. By saving her life and protecting her, he had unknowingly invoked an ancient custom, life-debt marriage. For a princess, such a bond was not symbolic. It was binding law. The chamber erupted in chaos. Daniel, stunned, tried to explain. I didn't mean I was just helping her, but it was too late. To refuse would dishonor the princess and potentially reignite the war. The Veari delegation, who had come from negotiations, seized on the declaration. To them, this was fate, a sign that peace would be forged not through treaties, but through blood ties. And so, against his protest, Corporal Daniel Mercer found himself married by interstellar law and Veari custom, the Princess Silari Veer. Climax. The weeks that followed were surreal. Daniel was transported to the Veari capital, a sprawling city of crystalline towers and luminous canals. Everywhere he went, eyes followed him, some filled with awe, others with hatred. He was a human who had wed their princess, a living symbol of peace or betrayal, depending on who you asked. Silari, however, stood firm. She defended him publicly, even when nobles sneered and warriors challenged his worthiness. In private, she softened, teaching him Veari traditions, correcting his posture when bowing, laughing at his confusion during elaborate ceremonies. And slowly, Daniel realized he wasn't pretending anymore. What had begun as a desperate accident was turning into something real. Yet danger loomed. The factions that had tried to kill Silari still plotted in the shadows, unwilling to accept peace with humanity. One night, assassins infiltrated the palace, striking during a ceremonial feast. Daniel, unarmed, shielded Silari with his own body. Taking a blade to the shoulder, he fought with nothing but instinct and a broken spear haft, holding them off until guards arrived. His bravery silenced many doubters. Bloody but unyielding, he declared before the court, "I didn't marry her for politics. I married her because she matters." To me, the word shocked even him. But when he looked at Silari's eyes, glistening with unspoken emotion, he knew they were true. The conspirators were rooted out, their rebellion crushed. The emperor himself, towering and regal, finally acknowledged Daniel not as a hostage or an outsider, but as family. "You came as an enemy," he rumbled, "yet you stand as one who would bleed for us. That makes you Veari." Ending. Months passed, and the war officially ended with the Treaty of Veara. Trade routes reopened. Soldiers returned home, and for the first time in decades, hope stirred across the stars. Daniel Mercer, once just another weary soldier, now bore a title he never imagined, Prince Consort of the Veari Empire. His days were filled with endless ceremonies, council debates, and learning a culture so alien yet increasingly familiar. He stumbled, made mistakes, endured ridicule, but always at his side was Silari, steady and fearless. Sometimes, late at night, he would sit with her on the palace balcony, watching the twin moons rise. "I only try to help," he would murmur, half in disbelief. And Silari would smile, resting her scaled hand on his. "And in helping, you found your destiny." Their union did not erase all divisions, nor did it solve every problem between their peoples. But it planted something more enduring than treaties or borders: trust, a bridge between two species once sworn to destroy each other. And it all began with a single choice, a soldier's instinct to protect, and a princess's decision to honor that act with her heart. Daniel never thought of himself as a hero, but as he stood on the balcony beside his alien bride, listening to the city's hum, he realized that sometimes the galaxy didn't need heroes. Sometimes it just needed someone willing to help.